do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
What's up, everybody? My name is Ethan. This is Courtside TV. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So, the Philadelphia 76ers have made a number of moves this offseason after hiring Daryl Morey, of course, as their new guy in the front office. He left the Houston Rockets and pretty quickly decided to join the Philadelphia 76ers, and he had a pretty big job on his hands fixing this roster because, as we know, last season was very disappointing for Philadelphia. They didn't, reach the same heights as they did the previous year, and many were expecting them to be, a real contender for the title and for the NBA Finals, and they ended up getting swept in the first round. So it was just an all-around disaster of a season for Philadelphia, but I think they're in a prime position to make another run at it with all the moves that Daryl Morey has made to really just fix this roster almost overnight. They had a flurry of trades and moves that they made on draft night. Most primarily getting rid of Al Horford and taking on Danny Green in exchange for that. They had to give up a first-round pick in order to do so, but I would say that's more than worth it because you're getting off of Al Horford, who they signed last offseason, and a lot of people thought that was a pretty good move, right? You're like, okay, he can probably play power forward. He's past his prime a little bit, but he's a good veteran. He can come in, and if you're trying to win a championship, I think that'll work. It just ended up being a disaster for spacing, for the coach could just not figure out minutes, how to balance him and Embiid together, and just all the lineups were just really, really weird. It just never, ever worked. And so getting rid of Al Horford it's just a kind of addition by subtraction because you're getting back to what you were a little bit more a year before. Adding Danny Green is as a shooter, even though people like to make fun of him and Lakers fans don't like him because he was shooting pretty poorly in the bubble, but he has a reputation as one of the best three-point shooters in the league. We saw what he did with the Raptors just a couple of years ago. So for me, there's no reason to believe that Danny Green will, all of a sudden turn into a horrible shooter. Maybe he'll struggle in the playoffs, who knows? But that's a nice shooting piece for them, and that's the one thing that they were absolutely lacking last year. I talked about this a lot in my Philadelphia 76ers, offseason preview from a while back. They were just missing shooting, and Daryl Morey has totally fixed that, not only with the addition of Danny Green, but also bringing in Seth Curry, which, to me, that was an absolute home run of a trade. Trading away Josh Richardson for Seth Curry, I believe they also gave up a second-round pick, if I'm not mistaken, in order to bring in Seth, or maybe Dallas gave up the pick. I'm actually not sure on that. Could have gone either way, but regardless, bringing in Seth Curry is, a great shooter. He is among the top in the league when it comes to three-point percentage. I believe he was like third in the league last year on pretty high volume, like 45% from three on a large amount of attempts per game. So he is like a certified sniper. That Curry family, seriously, it runs in their genes somehow. I don't get how it works, but Steph, Seth, and Dell, all amazing shooters. So Seth comes in. Him and Danny Green will be able to form a new shooting tandem in the backcourt for Philadelphia. I'm not sure which one of them will start. I think it'll probably be Curry, have Danny Green come off the bench. Maybe Green can even start at the three. We're not really sure how that starting lineup is going to look. But really just the major win for them is getting rid of Al Horford's contract, because now that gives them a lot more flexibility moving forward. Danny Green's on an expiring deal. Seth Curry is not very expensive. They brought in Dwight Howard on the minimum. He comes in as a backup center for Joel Embiid. I don't think that really necessarily moves the needle too much. Yes, Dwight Howard was good with the Lakers last year, but who's to say he just doesn't revert back to his old ways, not playing next to LeBron and AD anymore. Who knows what kind of player Dwight will be next year for them. But, I mean, it's a minimum signing. It's not super consequential either way, but I just think viewing that as a huge addition is probably a little bit disingenuous. Dwight is obviously past his prime at this point and is a role player. We'll have to see how successful he is with Philadelphia as opposed to the Lakers, where he was very much set up for success last year. And then just adding more depth pieces. Terrence Ferguson was also brought over in that Danny Green Al Horford trade. He might not play a lot, but he could potentially be something. Still a young guy with potential as a defensive wing, 3-and-D type of wing player, as well as Tony Bradley is just another rotation big man, potential backup option if Embiid is ever to miss time with an injury. So that's not a bad move either. And then in the draft, Tyrese Maxey fell to them at 21st. Maxey is a guy, I've heard a lot about him being like one of those faster guards, a guy he can shoot a little bit, Not really too familiar with Maxi's game, but, seems like that's a pretty solid pickup for them. Paul Reed, who, had a pretty high projection, if I'm not mistaken, was projected to be like maybe even a late first, early second round draft pick, fell all the way down. They got him at 58th overall, so right near the end of the draft there. Picking up a guy with some decent potential, probably won't play much in year one, maybe gets a two-way contract, but that could be somebody. Isaiah Joe, also, from what I understand, is a pretty good shooter as well, so adding just more shooting to this team. So, really, we knew this was going to happen, right? As soon as you bring in Daryl Morey, he's going to do what he can to really reshape the roster in order to fit his needs. And for me, I think he's done an amazing job already. I was certain that they weren't going to break up Embiid and Simmons right now. A lot of people were like, oh, Daryl's coming in, and Daryl, he loves three-point shooting. We just saw what he did with the Rockets, where they really leaned into that three-point and free throw style, along with Mike D'Antoni as the coach, James Harden as the star. That's kind of what worked the best for the players and the personnel that they had on that team, was to really lean into, that style of play. Whereas here with Philadelphia, they, coming into this offseason, they didn't have any personnel for that. They obviously don't have a star guard who has the same skill set as James Harden, right? You're not going to turn Ben Simmons into a 35-point-per-game scorer, on good efficiency, and turn him into an MVP candidate playing that way. It's just not going to happen. And Joel Embiid is not going to turn into, like Clint Capella as a rim-rolling, lob-catching center, or Anthony Davis shooting from the mid-range or perimeter, or whoever it is. Daryl is leaning into playing to his star strengths, and that's what smart GMs do, right? He looked at the roster and said, okay, we have these two players, both are pretty good defensively, a little bit, maybe not quite as durable, kind of injury prone. Simmons is obviously a non-shooter. Embiid is okay as a shooter at the 5 position, and he looked at all of that and said, okay, we got to get rid of Al Horford, bring in some more shooting, flipping Josh Richardson, whereas Richardson is he's a better perimeter defender than Seth Curry is, but he's not as great of a shooter, and so he said, well, we already have a lot of perimeter defense and interior defense on this roster, so we're going to bring in Seth Curry as a shooter, and it fits just much, much better with the roster that Philadelphia has. So really, I've just got to say, it's been a home run offseason for Philly so far. And for me, usually when I am making predictions on teams and how good I think they're going to be coming into the next year, I generally think it's almost kind of a mistake to view teams through the lens of what they did last season, right? We can look at the players and the reputation all of these players have and say, okay, we know that Ben Simmons missed last postseason. We know that Joel Embiid can sometimes be made of glass and kind of is injured a lot. But those two, they were nearly in the Eastern Conference Finals just a couple of years ago. Yes, a lot of that was due to Jimmy Butler, but these two guys can obviously work together at points. We've seen a roster where it's worked, and flipping Al Horford away just kind of clears that center position and really makes it more defined what they're actually trying to do here. So, just looking at what this roster has and how all these pieces fit together, it's so much better than it was last year. And I just think, looking at this team through the lens of a 6 seed that got swept in the first round, it's just wrong. They're going to be better than they were last season. I don't know if they're a finals contender. We'll just have to see it on the court. But for me, I think Philadelphia has replaced themselves as one of those top 3 to 4 contenders in the Eastern Conference. I would definitely put them in that tier with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics. Who knows how good the Raptors are going to be. They've had some pretty significant turnover as well. Also, the Brooklyn Nets are in there. But I definitely think that Philly is in that group. And we'll just have to see how good it ends up being for them. So, like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, ring the bell if you want to. Leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about Philadelphia's offseason so far. And I'll see you guys in the next one.